She covers stories. She covers stories. So sorry, I lost my spot. She covers stories in American South, Midwest, and East Coast. From timeless portraiture to varied editorial, commercial, and documentary assignments, Robinson continues to break the visual prejudices of race, gender, class, and age. She's also deepening her focus on memory, family, death, and reflection, how they live in the world and what they might look like to each of us. Robinson developed a groundbreaking and innovative phototherapy program in 2015 with senior citizens at William Hodson Community Care Center in the Bronx. Through the use of photography, older residents were able to openly explore personal and social issues. She continues similar social workshops and programming centered around photography across the country. Robinson is committed to public art, making photography in and with communities to expand knowledge, build relationships, and diversify visual narratives. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us tonight. And Kurth, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Wow, that was quick. I think I'm ready. Hi, thank you so much, Farah. Thanks for that great introduction. Nina, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so why don't we tell the people where you're from, where you're like where you are right now?
Okay, so I'm currently in LA. I just wrapped up a cannabis commercial job in LA, and I was down here for a few days, and I head back up north to be with family for a day, and then I head back on to Minneapolis.
Nice, very cool. And I'm tuning in from DC.
Yeah.
Nothing really exciting happening here.
Yeah.
No, and first of all, thank everyone for joining. Seems like you got a pretty packed house. We connected, I look when I was asked to kind of look at your work, or not even look at your work, but kind of sit in this conversation with you. I had been familiar with your work even before we became kind of Fuji cohorts, so to speak, and then you and I had a chance to connect on the phone. When was that? Last Friday, I think it was.
Yeah.
And you were driving like across the country again.
Yeah, I was driving from Northern California down to LA. Yeah.
So why don't we kind of start off the conversation with you telling us about yourself, and like you drive a lot, Nina.
I gotta say, no, you're right. I do. I drive a lot. During the pandemic, not so much. I honestly, I didn't feel inclined to drive or travel. I mean, I could have, definitely, but I just wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't a time to really like be going, during 2020, and so I didn't go on any road trips. I wasn't, and I was working locally mostly. But before 2020, oh my gosh, I've driven across country at least twice. I've been to every state except for Hawaii and Alaska. And I travel, like I've traveled by plane, train, automobile, bus, you name it. I've done it. So yeah, I am a heavy traveler, but I love driving the most because driving gives you the opportunity to reflect on a lot of things. My work is a mixture of deep, deep and also traumatic stories, and so it gives me an opportunity in between those stories that I'm working on, and I'm connecting with the subjects that are in front of my lens. Time to deeply reflect and decompress from some of those heavier stories.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
when we were chatting on Friday,
Mhm.
we chatted for maybe about 40 minutes, and then we started talking about magic.
Yeah. Yes, I
I-
wasn't sure we were gonna get into that, but yeah, I'm all about that magic. Yeah.
All right. So I sent you kind of some pre-developed questions, but you and I flowed so well on the phone. I just we're gonna get to the questions, and I think Nina, your preference was for the audience, if anyone like wanted to just
Join in.
question,
Oh yeah.
conversation. You know, we're gonna open it up. We're gonna just kind of flow with
Yeah.
it. But let's talk about the title of this, like kind of the theme, right? We're talking about memory, death, endings and beginnings, and reflection.
Yes.
How they live in the world and what they might look like to each of us, right? Now, memory, death, reflection, beginnings, and endings. I'm just gonna jump right into it.
Okay.
Your work resonated with me because I am someone that moves a lot as well, right? I'm probably the complete opposite to you in 2020 because everything was super cheap and like I spent so much money on getting my nose swabbed, it's ridiculous. But I moved quite a bit. But tell us a bit about your upbringing. You know, where you're from, where your people are from, and how it connects to your work. And then, you know, I'm gonna have you lead the conversation into kind of the present moment and talk about memory, death, beginnings, and endings, right?
Yeah.
You and I know exactly what that is.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I think, you know, I'm grateful for you even being here today. I know, you know, Joe and everyone at Fuji is, but tell us about Nina. Like, where's Nina from? Where does the work come from? You know, as I looked through your body of work, the work you did in the Bronx really stood out to me. You know, where you essentially use photography outside of photographs, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't about making photographs. It was about, you know, like, what does photography mean to you and how do you express that and relay that and relate to that? So, you know, kind of giving you some things to touch on, and then, you know, I'm just gonna let you go.
Okay.
Then, you know, I want to talk about Arkansas, right? I want to talk about.
We'll save that for the end. We'll
Okay.
save then because you know I might start crying and stuff, and that way I just close my computer right quick.
We'll come find you.
And just be like, peace the fuck out.
We'll come find you.
Yeah.
Nina, you're gonna finish this. All right. So take it over, Nina. Tell us about where you're from, where your people are from.
Okay, so I grew up in Vacaville, California. It's a small town outside of the Bay Area, and I have several like family members in the Bay Area in Oakland. My parents, my mom is from Arkansas, and my dad is from Louisiana. The great thing about my parents, I come from a working class family, so I feel like I don't know, a lot of the work that I do, it's to honor them. It's to honor my parents and what they sacrificed just so that I could be here telling these stories and, just doing the things that I'm doing. And I always reflect on that. I'm always reflecting on that, why I'm here, what my purpose is, within my profession, and allowing myself to grow, to shift, to evolve, to continue to evolve. And I'll always say this: I'm a student in this life. I'm not a master at anything. I'm a student. I'll always be a student in this life. And it's important to acknowledge that, because when you acknowledge that you're a student and you're always learning, that gives you, I feel like you become more creative. I guess what I'm trying to say, your work or my work evolves with ease instead of me resisting change. So, so there's that. I actually want to go to a portrait because one of the questions you asked me was, an image that I felt was, one of my favorite images. I think that's what the question is.
Yeah, as you know, as we were kind of leading up to this, I thought about my my journey as a photographer and it being tied to a singular image. And I wanted to know, what is the image that either you created or someone else has created that when you experience that photograph, part of what you experience is what you hope your current and future work, would evoke in others. So
well, to answer your question, it's this image. This is an image that I took when I was commuting from Vacaville to San Francisco. when I was going to the Academy of Art University. And this was at the BART station. And I don't know this woman's name. I shot this image. This was my first roll of film. First year I started school, photography. And I had to beg my parents to go. They, even when I said, I'll pay for half the school, they were just like, we don't know about this art thing, you know. But I paid for part of my tuition, and I commuted like every other day to school. Then I also was working full time at a bank. I was, like, I was a hustler like back then, and I've been a hustler my entire life. Always like having a bunch of things going on. But this particular image, I feel, was a manifestation into the type of work that I do now. And this is the first image that I shot, just on that single roll of film in my like intro to photography class, at school. And I never got an image like this, that entire year or that school year. I mean, at the time I was majoring in commercial work. I wanted to do commercial photography, advertising, still, storytelling, but that's where like my mind was geared towards, while I was at that school. And this means something to me because the woman, I talked to her for a little bit, very sweet lady, and the light hits her in just the right way, and just in the spots that need, only the spots that really need to be seen.
Mm.
So it's a picture that I look to that truly, continues to inspire me to this day. And I photographed it maybe 15 years ago.
It's beautiful. So that kind of leads me into my next question, right?
Hmm.
Connecting with subjects, like, you said you met this woman and somehow you got to, make her photograph.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you want people to know about you, like the first time they meet you?
Mm. I come from truth and integrity, and I live through my truth.
Mm.
And it's the only way to be, living in the truth.
Oh, okay. My child just barged in the room.
It's okay. Hey, that's all right. She want to join? Hey,
All right, pumpkin. Miss Anna?
hi.
Mr. Peter,
Yes, Mama.
can we do 5 minutes for the playground?
Yes, go.
10 minutes
Yes,
for the
you can go to the
playground.
playground with
10
Miss Anna.
minutes for the
10 minutes. Yes.
Well,
10
yeah, you better give her 5 minutes
minutes.
playground.
That's always a risk, right? Since the lockdown, like something crazy or cute busted in the room.
Yeah, seriously, that stuff doesn't even bother me at all. Like it
Yeah.
shows that, one, you're a great dad, and don't even worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
she's adorable, by the way.
thank you. So back to the question, right? It's so you want people to know that you come with truth.
Yeah.
So how do you, as I look through your work, you have a lot of work that features people that you know intimately, family members,
Hmm.
but also work of what we may consider strangers, right?
Yeah.
People that you may not know that much about. Um, how do you connect with people doing portraiture? And is it any different connecting with, like an uncle or a cousin, someone a friend, versus someone you take a instant interest with in the public, and you engage them? How does that connect? And how do you said you want people to know that you come with, as I would say, with truth. How do you communicate that?
Asking questions and being a good listener. Asking less questions and just listening to people talk, allowing the people the space to speak. I've gotten the habit of the last few years asking, people, how do they want to be seen, and what does being seen mean to them? And, you know, a lot of folks who stand in front of my lens, they're stumped on that question. It makes them think a bit. Sometimes, like some assignments, some portrait sessions don't lend themselves to be that. But most of the time, the intimate portraiture that I do, you know, it lends itself to have those moments of just reflecting on that, what it is to be seen, how people see themselves. Oftentimes, people don't even know how they see themselves. Um, and I just, but you know, if a person is ever scared or intimidated by the camera, I just, you know, I try my best to, you know, make them relaxed, tell a joke. I try to just understand who's in front of my camera. I try to like even call them. I know that with some assignments, I can, you know, if I'm given enough time, I can call the people that I'm photographing and just say like, hey, I just want to introduce myself. I will be photographing you at this time, and I'm just want to let you know that we can talk a little bit first before we actually, you know, start photographing, because I want to make sure that you're comfortable with me.
Mm.
I'm not always able to do that, but when I do have a chance, you know, I definitely, that's how I approach it.
So as you know, so we've learned a couple things about Nina and seen some of your incredible portraits. How does travel in place, right? On our during our conversation on Friday, you've lived in quite a few places,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and it had nothing to do with you being like an army brat.
No.
Tell us
It
tell us a bit about, you know, the connection to place and the work that you do. I mean, one of your most prominent bodies of work is based on a place, right?
yeah, and we can go to that body of work actually while I'm talking about that. Let's see here. Where is it? We can just like let this play in the background. So yeah, no, you're right. I travel a lot. I've lived in 4 different places now. Originally being from California, I was I don't know. I actually dropped out of school. I never finished college. Um, I was still working at a bank, and my dad had passed away. It was like it already had been maybe 5 years, and I just had, you know, I was just like, what's my next step? Am I going to be, you know, doing this banking thing and then also doing photography? Because the two are so different, and you know, I hate banking. I hate my job. So you know, like where's my life? What am I gonna do?
Unless
What
you're depositing checks, right?
exactly. Exactly. um, and so I'm like, well, you know, I visited New York a few times already. I got my portfolio together, and back then it was like, you know, like I had a printed portfolio, you know, and I paid a guy to help me like just narrow down like what my style was going to be and prepare me in that way. And at the time I was focusing on fashion and music, and so he was like, oh gosh, he was this really like strict German photographer. Things have to be like this way, you know, in terms of creative. And so I'm like, okay. So I only had 20 images in my portfolio, my first like professionally printed portfolio, and 20 images on my website. And I was a little nervous. I was talking to seasoned photographers about this. They were just like, what are you doing? Like, you have so like other work that you should show, you should put in there. Why did you do this? I was like, well, I'm trusting like this guy's, you know, image, like, or his, I'm trusting his, just like his advice. And so, and so I went to New York. I called, and that time, like, you didn't really communicate, or at least like you did communicate through email, but I also cold called people. I called editors. I would go get my favorite magazines I would want to work for and look at the masthead that was like on the second page of the magazine, and I would look up the editors I would want to talk to, and I would call them up and say, hey, I'm in New York for this amount of time, can I set up a meeting? I ended up having like no meetings to at least 5 or 6 meetings, like in 3 days. And then I came back to California and I'm like, I don't know if anything's going to happen. And then I got my first job with Nylon Magazine. And then I consistently was shooting for Nylon Magazine, and I was photographing like cool rock bands and stuff. And it was a lot of fun. And I'm like, well, I can't stay. I'm not growing living here in California. I'm not growing being around the same people. I feel like I'm stuck. And so I'm like, all right, it's now or never. Let me move to New York. I had no money. I moved to New York. I had 3 suitcases. I either sold my shit or I or I gave it away, and I just moved to New York. I thought I had a plan. Plan didn't work out. It was actually pretty heartbreaking during that time. It was like one of my lowest moments of my life, because like my family wasn't as supportive. During that time, I think I just turned 27. They were not supportive at all, like with my decision making. And they were like, you can come back, we'll pay for, your flight, or you can stay there. And I felt that there was nothing there to come back to. There was just nothing to come back to at all. And I was actually, and this is something I did not want to tell my mom or anyone, but I was homeless for like a month. I was homeless for a month, and I didn't really have like, my backup plan didn't work. And but I ended up meeting some really good people that helped me out, and we're friends like to this day. We're really good friends. So that's something that I don't talk about very much, because it was one of the lowest moments. And I'm like, did I actually make the right decision? But something, I ended up praying about it, and talking about spirituality. I did. I ended up praying about it. I'm like, am I really supposed to be here? And I said, if I'm not supposed to be here, just let me know. The very next hour, I meet this person who I ended up getting a room from, and for free. Like, they were just like, I've been in your situation. Don't worry about it. So yeah,
That's
that's how,
that magic, right?
that's that magic. I'm telling you, that's that magic that I didn't realize I had within myself. I didn't realize who my guides were. I didn't know a whole lot about spirituality. I didn't even understand it. That wasn't even part of my vocabulary. It wasn't even part of my, my life at the time. That's something that I learned over time as I just grew. And still to this day, I feel that New York was one of the best guardians I could have ever had, because I learned so much about myself, my strength, my own intuition, and trusting myself in my own decision making, in decision making, and never second guessing like anything that I am intuitively guided to do. Even if at the time it people don't think it makes sense, or even if at the time people are, just they just don't understand. Then that's fine. You don't have to understand me. Just know that, like, I know what I'm doing. And even if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm intuitively guided in the direction that I'm supposed to be headed. So,
And that's the most important thing, right?
for sure.
So you're in New York,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing you're in the Bronx, right?
Yeah, well, I was in Brooklyn for a bit, and then I went to Washington Heights, and then I landed in the Bronx, and I ended up just falling in love with the Bronx and getting like deeply rooted in the Bronx, and in the South Bronx off of Melrose. So it was one of the best experiences, because I got connected to folks at the Bronx Documentary Center. I volunteered there. I was teaching Friday nights, and and during that time I wasn't shooting much. I was like shooting nightlife, but I wasn't working much. I was working at a bar boutique and a cafe, and so like it was not like, it was weird because like I didn't necessarily like what I was doing at the bar boutique and the cafe, but having those jobs helped me and propelled me to the next step of my life. Like people don't even understand that. Like I got advertising jobs through working at that cafe. Like I'm the type of person that I'll look at a situation I may not like, and I'll see how I can make it work for me. What can I do to change this? What can I, like, yeah, I work at this shitty job. I'm not getting paid much, but what can I do to transform the situation? What's the opportunity within this situation? And so I would always have my business cards with me. I would always chat up the customers. I would always get to know like folks in the neighborhood. I spent a lot of time in Lower East Side. I was working there, like, from like I would go from my coffee shop job to the bar boutique that was literally like 2 doors down. And I was always hanging out there. I got to photograph amazing musicians. I got to like hang out at parties. I used it as an opportunity to network. I also didn't have a whole lot of money to like go out, but I packaged I packaged up these day old pastries for bartenders, and I would just like deliver them to the different bars I would want to go to.
Beautiful.
And that was my thing. So I always made like, situations work for me, even if it was fucked up and I didn't like the situation.
So that's the hustle, right? So
yeah, like I'm a hustler.
we actually have two questions. So the first one is, does Nina take the same approach? How do you want to be seen with strangers as well as family? Right? And then the second question, which I think is very good, it's where do you feel at home? And does feeling at home impact how you photograph?
Oh, good questions. The first question, I have to say, yes, I definitely treat my family members and strangers with the same respect. And I definitely ask like how they want to be seen. For the Arkansas family album photographs, I didn't ask so much because my mom actually wanted me to photograph. My mom wanted me to take pictures, even though she didn't know the extent of me taking pictures. She didn't know that I was going to do all of this. I didn't even know I was. But she wanted me to take pictures of like the experience in the South and of family. And this body of work was published in the New York Times. And before it actually was published, I asked my family, before, like I asked them, I was like, are you okay with this? Will you be okay with me, publishing this work? And so I made sure I got approvals first.
Okay. Did you make your family sign releases?
No, I didn't make them.
Kidding.
And the second question, I have to say, I always struggled with that. Like when I moved to New York, I was always going, like in the beginning, I was always going against the current of the city. And I didn't feel fully settled. I think it took maybe a year for me to really get settled into the city and understand like just the energy of New York and to flow with it instead of against it. Like you can't control everything. You can't control certain things. You just have to flow with things, because in New York, like things will happen where it's extremely good or extremely bad. There's hardly any in between. And you just kind of have to flow with that energy of the city. And so over the years, it just became about me being, finding home with myself and just being comfortable with myself and where I'm, I feel like in a way I was intuitively guided to live in Arkansas. Because at first I was just going back and forth between New York and Arkansas and photographing and spending time with family. And then I felt like the pull to the South to live there. And I did that for, 2 years. But then, you know, Arkansas wasn't necessarily conducive to my lifestyle, so that wasn't working.
Mm.
So to answer the question, it's important to just find home within yourself, no matter where you go. As long as you're, you know, you're at home and you're settled within yourself, you're good. At least for me, I'm good.
Beautiful. So as we were gearing up to have this conversation,
Mhm.
you know, your mom passed away,
Yeah.
and you know, this conversation was entitled and set up way before any of that happened. And it's a conversation about beginning and endings, right?
Yeah.
And you know, tell us a bit about, you know, this moment and how it connects to your work, the work you've already done and the work that you intend on doing in the future, right? I know, you know, from what I can tell, you're intuitively guided, um, but I would imagine that from now, like, you know, I would imagine that there is some sense of like you do have some idea of like what's next.
I I do and I don't at the same time. You know, this is like where the magic, like we can talk about magic. So I come from a long line of gifted seers. And you know, I think most in our audience may not understand what that is, but like, you know, my ancestors, like they see visions, and I also see visions. And you know, it's not just being about a photographer. Like I actually have these very powerful dreams. And again, you can take what resonates and leave the rest. But this is my life, this is who I am. And these visions and dreams intensify, or have intensified over the last couple of years. And I've been grieving my mom's death since February. And because I got a series of dreams, very vivid dreams, in February, of just her decline. And then I also heard her voice on the phone, and I heard the decline in her voice, and it's been really, really hard. Um, may I have a moment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was really, really hard to see those visions, because it was I mean, I'll talk about a really beautiful one, but the last, you know, the last like dream was her funeral. And it was something that I kept busy, so I didn't have to think about that, and I didn't want to believe that, I didn't want to feel that, those things. But they, you know, those dreams manifested themselves, you know, it, you know, into reality. And I knew it, like deep down I knew it. Even from like some of the assignments I was working on, you know, it was like it led up to her passing away. um there was a beautiful dream that I had that week, and it started with that dream. And it was my mom and I, we were driving, and I was in the passenger seat. And she was driving the car, and I was bossing her around. It's like, Mom, you're going the wrong way, you're not doing it right, Mom, like we're supposed to go this way, no, we can't be. And like I was trying to control, you know, like how she drove. and and then we stop and we get out of the car, and she, you know, she's leading me somewhere. I was like, Mom, we're going the wrong way, where are you taking me, I don't understand, what are you doing? And she leads me to this really beautiful village. And it's just a gorgeous, you know, village. And I'm like, I'm in awe, I'm like looking around, I was like, Mom, this is so beautiful, this is incredible. And she's like, see. And then we keep on going, and that was the dream. And then the dreams after that was her going into the hospital, and me not knowing how to dial 911, and then her funeral. It was probably the most terrifying week that I had, and that was the end of February.
And you know, there, thanks for sharing that. So there are there's a photograph, this one,
Mhm.
and then the one after that.
This one, yes.
I,
I'll stop it.
yeah, I know the story about the second photograph. What's the story behind the photograph before it? Is that your mother's funeral, right?
That was my mother's funeral. Just 1 second. I'll stop this for a second. Um, yeah, that was this is at my oh, sorry.
One second, Nina. So I'm gonna add something else to that question.
Okay.
Obviously, you made photographs during, as you described it, the most terrifying week you've experienced, right? Um, because you're sharing photographs of, that you made. What else did you photograph that week? And like, tell us about why you made these photographs.
Um, this was the only photograph that I actually made during my mom's funeral. There were a few other ones, ones of like of my brother and my brother-in-law and everything. But that was the only time I photographed, and I actually didn't bring my camera. I just used my cell phone. Um, I I didn't feel the pull to photograph that day, um, because my mom, I know, would never want to be represented in that way. And she would not want to be remembered on the day that she died. She would want to be remembered on how she lived and who she inspired and who she helped and who loved her. And so this was the only photograph I took that day. Um, and and I try to really, intuitively think about like, okay, how would my mom want to be represented? Like my mom touched so many different people. My mom and dad both, like they were the parents. If you weren't getting what you needed at your house, you came to our house and you got it from our parents. That was just how they were. That and and so and that's how I want to be, and I don't think my mom really wanted to be represented any other way, but maybe me photographing the people who loved her the most and the people who, just, like, I mean, my mom's like a little celebrity, seriously, in our town. Everybody knows her. Um, and her funeral was, it was gravesite service. I turned around and I saw so many people. It was really intimidating. And so, um, in terms of projects or highlighting, just my mother's love and who she was, I would like to photograph the people who were always touched by her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so how does, from what you can tell now, right? Because the this is also, it sounds like a lot of like self-discovery, right? You
Yeah. Yeah.
mentioned you are, as I would describe, kind of nomadic, right? When I called you, you were driving from Sacramento to LA.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, yeah, I'm just driving.
Yeah. It's nothing. It's
Nothing.
like 6 hours.
And then you're telling me about driving from Minneapolis to the West Coast. So you
Yeah.
spent time in Minneapolis during the George Floyd, uh, kind of the George Floyd moment.
Yeah.
Um, what was your approach working in that space, right?
Oh yeah. I'm going to answer that question, but I definitely want to talk about this photograph, like since we were on the subject of my mom. So like this particular photograph is a very important one because the day before it, my mother passed away. The day before that, I spoke with my mother on the phone. And I told her, because my mom loved to follow my route, everywhere I went. If I was driving long distance, she would always say, put me on your little friend finder on the iPhone, and so I can watch you, because she enjoyed doing that. She'd call me up and be like, oh, you crossed this state, all right, you know, and just like kind of cheer me on. And she was just that type of person. And so you know, I talked to her that Sunday, and then she died that Monday, the next day. And then on Tuesday, I'm driving through Nevada, Elko, Nevada, and I see this hole in the sky. And like, it's just a hole in the clouds, you know, it's raining everywhere else except for like, there's this hole in the clouds. And then all of a sudden it started to form into this heart as I'm driving through. And I just start laughing because I'm like, God, you're nosy. And, and I'm like, it must be you, you know, doing that. And I just started like crying because when I found out my mom passed away in North Dakota, and I had a panic attack. And the nurse, like my siblings didn't want to tell me because they knew I was driving, and I had no idea she was going to pass away. But I, you know, my detective ass needed to like know everything right then, right there. And I, you know, I called the hospital, I called the nurse. I'm like, you know, I heard my mom went to ICU, what's going on? And she told me. And I just completely lost it. She had to actually guide me off the road because I just lost it. So seeing this in the sky was just like, it was just confirmation that like, you're gonna be okay, you know, from my mom. So
Beautiful.
yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. But yeah, and that's why this is a very important photograph.
Yeah, we chatted about this on Friday,
Yeah.
and it, you know, someone said, "Wow, completely full circle. How do you want to be seen?" You know, and it's beautiful that you've considered that even in your mother's passing and how you represent her in photographs, right?
Definitely, yes.
So as you make more photographs of the people you love and the people you encounter and share truth with, you know, who are you making those photographs for?
It's a good question. One second, I'll start this. Who am I making the photographs for? I'm making the photographs to honor the people in front of my lens. Everyone who comes in front of my lens, I make sure that I'm honoring them and who they are and their truth as well. And that's really important to me. That's why talking to everyone who comes in front of my lenses is important, and understanding who they are. And I'm also making photographs to capture history. I'm making photographs to capture memories. A moment, just, you know, just a moment in time where I was at, who this person was at that time. Yeah, so I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh, you said the most important thing is that it made sense to you, right?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does.
So let's. So you're formally trained, and the story we hadn't spoken about, you know, this portfolio you did with the German gentleman, or
Oh yeah, yeah.
you know, let's talk about aesthetic
Okay.
for a moment, because you know, as I look at your work, the aesthetic to me is just humanity.
Yeah.
Right. Speak to us a bit about, you know, your I guess some of the mechanics behind how you work, right? How do you navigate this idea of aesthetic or work looking or having to look a certain way in order for it to be deemed viable?
That's a good question. Practice, persistence, and a little bit of obsession.
Mm,
Okay. And focusing on what is meaningful to me. I mean, I really wanted to go in the direction of fashion and music, and I was doing that for a bit. I was photographing lookbooks, and I was photographing musicians, and it was fun. And I was also shooting underground parties, and I was, gosh, drinking a boatload of liquor with cool people and photographing. But I'm also, I've evolved. I'm not that person anymore. I mean, gosh, I love being in bed by 9:30 or at least 10. Like, so I'm not going to be out like doing that type of work anymore.
yeah.
I'm also a lot more thoughtful with my photography, and it's not that I wasn't thoughtful photographing parties, but in a way, like it meant something at the time, but in the grand scheme of things, the work that I'm doing right now is more purposeful. It's a lot more purposeful to me. Documenting my family, documenting other families, and building connections with individuals. um, and just spending time with them and being thoughtful about, who they are, how they want to be represented visually. That's so important to me. And talking with them about that's important to me. In terms of aesthetic, like finding like your style and aesthetic, I mean, it takes time. It really takes time. And how bad do you really want, like, first you need to know what you want to do, to practicing a lot, going out and photographing a lot. um, and another thing that actually helped me was this, like, I had a little shoot book. Actually, it was kind of a big shoot book. It was like, 8 by 10. And I would I would write down my ISOs and my ISO settings and my shutter speeds, and I would put pictures in there that weren't the best pictures. And then I would talk about how can I improve this time. I had that book for 6 years. Like, that's how much I deeply love, what I do. Like, I mean, I was, just, I would write about how can I improve? What can I do next time? That was a big thing for me. And so, like, yeah, I was trained like at this fancy school, but I also dropped out, and I pursued photojournalism at a city college in San Francisco. And I'm always like, I would describe myself as the photographer for the working class, because I'm part of the working class. And a lot of the people that I went to photojournalism school had two jobs, or one job or two jobs, while they're still trying to, like, go to school and do this craft and try and figure out how to be, a successful photographer, just in their field. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nina. I saw Farah popped on, so
Oh yeah.
that tells me like we're running. Um, you know, one of the things that I've enjoyed, this is our we've exchanged text messages.
Yeah.
This is our second, verbal face-to-face conversation. Is that every time we speak, there seems to be something else we learn about Nina. I learn about Nina. Um, you know, I and I think what you just shared is I didn't I didn't know that part of your story. So for me, it's inspiring, right? I mean, you gained, you've earned a lot of the space that you now occupy in the photography realm. And for photographers out there, I think someone posted earlier that you practice a lot. I'm glad you touched on that, because you gotta make a lot of photographs.
Oh God.
Have to be willing to fail.
Oh
I
God.
want to ask a question.
Like, well, one thing I tell people, like, the only way, like, I'm as the only reason why I'm as good as I am right now is because of all the fuck ups that I've done. It's like, that's just the way it goes. And I apologize. I'm so sorry. Like, I cuss. That's just who I am. That's how I talk. Um, I, have a nice smile, sailor's mouth. But yeah, so that's, that's all part of it. Screwing up and being okay with it, and just like getting back up and just doing it again, trying again.
Do you ever self-document? Do you ever make any self-portraits of yourself?
I do sometimes. I think I did it more when I was younger, and I think that this year I'm going to encourage myself to make more.
Okay. Why now? Why this year?
Because I noticed I don't have a whole lot of pictures of myself, like proper ones, and I'm like, this, that needs to change. So,
All right.
yeah.
Did your mom have a favorite photograph of yours? And, how much did she influence your work, if at all?
My mom loved lighthouses, and she always wanted me to go out and photograph lighthouses. That's something that I can definitely honor her with doing a whole series on lighthouses.
Great.
She loved me going back to Arkansas and photographing, that side of the family, her side of the family, because it also gave her a glimpse of just like, because my mom left Arkansas at 17, so she was able to see Arkansas with fresh eyes as well through my photography.
Mm.
And she went to I had a show at, apologies if you hear that, just a bunch of sirens. But so she went to the show that was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and she cried because all like a rush of memories like came back to her. So, and another thing about my mom worked at a newspaper, and she worked in the circulation department. She had nothing she wasn't like an editor or anything or a photographer. She handled complaints for 30 years. So to be like at this point in my career and doing what I do and telling these stories, it's, I've always thought of my mom and, like the work that she put in. And here her daughter is out here, telling these stories, working for national publications and international publications. And so it's just, this is how I honor her through my work, by doing like by being the best version of myself, like professionally, but also in my personal life.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for such a really beautiful conversation. It feels very special to be able to share some smiles while we talk about difficult things. And I really appreciate the energy and light that both of you brought to this conversation. So thank you so much. And if you feel so inclined in the chat, please give our panelists a round of applause for the great job that they did.
Thank you.
We're gonna have to unfortunately end. I could listen to you two talk forever. If there was like an after party that we can do this at, then maybe just let me know if there's a different Zoom link I need to know about. But really, thank you to everybody for joining us today. Couple reminders for what we have coming up. Tomorrow is the last day to submit your application to the Focus on the Story Emerging Storytellers grant. This is also sponsored by Fujifilm. You can get some cool gear from them. So thank you again to our wonderful sponsors.
We have like the best gear.
It's you're coming at us from a Fujifilm webcam today, aren't you? You look great. Love
Yes.
it. Awesome. And then Saturday morning, we have a great talk with Karen Marshall on long-term projects and creating photo books. If that's something you are interested in working on, interested in understanding more about, this is going to be a really good one for you. And just a reminder, we have a very full schedule of events through the end of the month over on focusonthestory.org/events. And there is something for everybody on there. Before we go, I'd love to find out, Kurth, what are you working on right now that you're excited about?
Bedtime.
Yeah. Perfect.
No, I've been doing just projects, a portrait series for like a really big company, just chronicling some of their practitioners. Yeah, and making pictures.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Nina, same question for you.
I really, I'm going to be shooting with my film camera more often and doing portraits. Yeah. So I think personal work is going to be a lot of like medium format portraiture on film.
Mm.
In terms of professional work, I wrapped up this campaign, which I'm, excited about, and I'm heading back to Minneapolis to do some work for, I think, a museum. Yeah, So yeah,
Amazing.
and
I'm
rest,
looking for,
a lot of rest.
yes, you can't make all of this work if you're not resting. That's part of the work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again, Nina. Thank you, Kurth. This was wonderful. We all appreciate you joining us. Again, if you're in DC, you can sneak on over to the Swedish Embassy and come hang out with us and check out some cool art.
You don't have to sneak anymore. The city's open.
That's true. Good point. It's open. It's not outside. We are very much outside.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for this talk.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Farah. Thanks,
Farah.
everyone. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks,
Stacy.
guys.
Peace.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.